Hello there, and welcome to episode 5 of Live from Vaders Castle. I'm joined by John Lee here.
Hello there.
And then I'm, of course, Dan Macquarie. We really need to get better intros, don't we, John?
Well, it'll come.
It'll come all a good time. How you doing, John?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I've got we're recording in the evening, Friday evening, because obviously we had Bad Batch today, so I've got a nice little Bacardi to drink.
Bacardi?
Yeah, a little Bacardi and Coke with me tonight. So, got to celebrate Bad Batch being out and it being good.
Yeah, true. I mean, I just have a casual gamma ray to celebrate, the finest stuff in life.
Exactly. So, it's been a pretty exciting week to be a Star Wars fan, I guess. We had May 4th, obviously. May the 4th be with you to anyone who was celebrating the great day in the calendar.
The Lord's Day.
The Lord's Day, exactly. And we got a brand new series kicked off on Monday, The Bad Batch, which, of course, we're going to be talking about in length today. And yeah, I loved it. I was very excited. I came out of it feeling pretty gassed that Star Wars is back on our screens every week, and it's a good time to be a fan.
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, I think to start off with a 70-minute or 75-minute intro episode was very, very good for the fans.
It was
nice to see that it didn't feel like it was cut short at all. Like the story that they said and they let out in the first episode, I think really fit with that 70 minutes. I wasn't sitting there thinking at the end of it, I needed more from the episode. Obviously, I need more from the series, but the episode was well timed, good pacing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, we'll just get into it now, but yeah, that we basically just got a new Star Wars movie basically on Tuesday, didn't we? I mean, it was 75 odd minutes. It was quite in terms of story, animation, cinematics, everything. It was just a big event of an episode, and I thought it was incredible. I really, really enjoyed it. I give that quite a high rating. That first episode, it was very exciting.
Yeah, it was very good. I mean, I had a terrific start, I think, with the. I really liked the opening title page with the Clone Wars, and it flamed away into the Bad Batch. I thought that was
I think they were
sick.
Very clearly making a point that the Clone Wars is over and it's the Bad Batch now, which I thought was nice because in the second episode we didn't get that. It just started with the Bad Batch. So I thought that was very intentional because we were seeing Order 66. We were seeing the end of the Clone Wars in that first episode. But now, by episode 2, we've moved past that. Now the Clone Wars are officially over. And now we're sort of dealing with the aftermath of it, which aptly was the title of the first episode, Aftermath.
Yeah, set up the series beautifully about what it's going to be, what it's going to be about, where in the Star Wars timeline that we are, and stuff like that. Perfectly introduced for them in that first episode.
Yeah, and I think we'll just sort of go beat by beat from the beginning. But I mean, to open up with Tom Kane's narration, his classic Clone Wars narration, and seeing shots from Revenge of the Sith in this ridiculously good animation style, which has progressed even more since the final season of Clone Wars. I thought that was incredible. Seeing Anakin and Obi-Wan, on Grievous's ship and all these sort of little shots that we know really well from Revenge of the Sith, just very briefly in front of us in animation with that classic narration was a real nostalgic hit. And also the last time we were going to hear that as Clone Wars fans, it was quite a exciting but sad moment.
Yeah, I mean, hearing his voice at the start of every episode or arc on Clone Wars was iconic. So I think we definitely needed that one last time before we delve into this new show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, as you say, that animation at the start was unreal. I mean, I've seen a couple of videos in the past few days where people have taken the live action and put it in with the animation, so it will cut into the animation at those points, and it's literally frame for frame. They've done such a good job with changing that. And yeah, that Obi-Wan and Anakin look unreal. And it literally has been like a year since season 7, but they look even better in the 2 seconds we see them.
The quality of animation is ridiculous. When I was watching episode 2 this morning, I just sort of like paused it at a moment. I just admired it. I was like, but this animation is another level. I mean, the style is very unique, but I'm obsessed with the style now. I've seen it so much. And I just think they've done such an incredible job, and they keep on pushing the boundaries of what they can do with this animation. And it's just, it's stunning.
Yeah, I'm very excited about where they, especially over the season, about what other characters they're going to put into it with this, maybe characters that we need to see for like the first time in this sort of animation style. I mean, we already got one already, which was Caleb Dune. We saw a young version of Kanan in his animation style. So I'm interested to see if there's going to be more characters that were introduced and seeing them in that animation style, which I think would be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, whilst we're on that topic, let's just talk about Order 66. I mean, how many times is Star Wars going to have to make us watch another Jedi getting murdered in Order 66? It's painful to watch.
Playing with the heartstrings.
Oh, it is. But I mean, we were talking about it last week when we were sort of making our predictions about, whether the Bad Batch were going to go through with Order 66. Were we going to see it? I mean, we were right to a certain extent. We did see Order 66. We didn't think they were going to go through with it. So, that was something that we were sort of expecting, but I did not expect it to be Caleb Dune and Depa Billaba. I did not expect to see that. As soon as I saw Depa Billaba, I was like, wait a minute, that's Kanan's master. I was like, there's no way we're seeing young Kanan. And then obviously he comes sliding down the hill, and I was like, oh my God, I freaked out at that moment.
Yeah, it was very cool to see him. And yeah, as you said, as soon as you see his master, you're like, oh, surely he's got to be coming out of the forest soon, or he's coming out somewhere.
Yeah, they sort of teased with that little, my Padawan's on his way, and then I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, you're like, oh, no way. And what I liked about it as well is he's still voiced by the same actor, by Freddie, a grown man voicing the, I don't know, how old is he, like 12? 10?
Yeah, he's meant to be 12. I did see a lot of criticisms about how he sounded a little bit too old, or how like Jedi puberty hits like really early.
Yeah, maybe he just hit puberty early. His voice box is broken already. He's done.
I mean, it didn't bother me. I liked it. As soon as I heard him, I was like, wait a minute, that is Kanan's voice. So I like that. But yeah, I did see some of the memes about it. It was quite funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really showed like that was in case people weren't entirely sure who that was.
Yeah.
I really think having the same voice actor helped nail that, even if it doesn't quite fit the age requirement, but yeah, it's a little thing really.
And I think, that is a character that he sort of developed himself as an actor, but, him and Dave Filoni, but, that's a character that he's taken from season 1 through to season 4. And I think it's good that he got that chance to voice him in this, even if it did sound a little bit out there, but it didn't take me out of the moment too much. I was too excited about seeing Caleb Dune in like animation again. It's exciting.
Yeah, it was very cool. Another small critique I did see for him, actually, I'm not sure how you'll feel about this because I'm kind of on the fence about it, is so people were complaining about how white he looks. And I was like, I suppose, but then I suppose he's on that planet. It looks very snowy.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm a tanned man most of the time, but if I've been, sitting indoors most of the year like I have now, like I'm almost as white as anyone.
Yeah, and also like the snow on the floor does cause the reflect. Like when light reflects off of snow onto someone's face, it does whiten out your face quite a bit. I don't know whether it was established what Kanan's skin tone is supposed to be. I'm not really sure. But it wasn't something I noticed. I thought Caleb looked brilliant in terms of the animation. But I guess it was a very snowy and, white planet. I don't know how long they'd been fighting there, but I guess the sort of suggestion was that they'd been battling there for quite a while. So yeah, it was interesting. I guess whilst we're on that sort of topic, the big conversation which is sort of on everyone's mind at the moment is the sort of the retconning or not retconning of the Kanan Last Padawan comic. Have you read it yourself?
I did. I've read the first issue, just because I suppose that was the only part of it that overlapped with the episode. So I read the first issue, and I mean, they've changed certain things, but I suppose the Bad Batch went around then, so they couldn't have wrote them in anyway, and two, is these stories are about perspective, aren't they? Some people remember things differently, or like the Bad Batch weren't common knowledge, and maybe if just whoever's writing the story or like telling the story, I suppose if it's being told by someone else, like wouldn't have mentioned them, in the heat of battle and things like that as well. You're going to remember things differently.
Yeah, I think. I've got sort of a variety of thoughts on it. I'm not too bothered, purely because the broad strokes of that story was the same. Like it was the planet was the same. Kala, Grey, the clone, turned on Master Depa Blaba. She was killed. Kanan was told to run. He ran into a forest, was pursued through a forest, and then escaped the clones. Now, there's a whole storyline that in the comic that follows after is about the clones continuing to track him. All of that could still happen within, the context of this storyline. The only thing that was different really was the Bad Batch's presence and the fact that it happened during the day as opposed to at night. I think I like to see it in a similar way to what you were saying, John, in the sense of, these are war stories, these are mythologies, interpretations of scenes could be different from different people's perspectives or the storyteller's perspective. And in this sense, in the comic, Kanan was the narrator. Caleb was the narrator. Did he remember things? This is us stretching our head canon to explain why it could be slightly different. Does he just remember things differently? PTSD, it was a long time ago. Maybe he's just haunted by all of this and doesn't quite remember exactly what happened. I seen a funny YouTube comment, which was, Kanan was just drunk and he just told the story completely wrong, which in canon, Kanan was a drunk for a while. So I saw that explanation. I was like, you know what, that works. But yeah, I'm not bothered by it. I think this is always going to happen. It happened with Cobb Vanth a little bit in Mandalorian. And, whilst the character was the same and some of the origins were ever so slightly different, but broad strokes, it works fine. So I think as long as they're not fundamentally changing a character or an event that's taken place in a book or a comic, I'm not that bothered by it. As long as the broad strokes line up, I'm not that bothered. If they took a real important detail and changed it, I think I would be more bothered. But this, I feel like, in the grand scheme of things, you can still read that Kanan comic and consider it canon. It's just a slightly different telling of the story. I don't know. That's my ramblings.
I mean, I feel like it's one of those things in like story works that's going to be from like any sort of like pop culture, like Star Wars, Marvel. If you get so hung up on keeping everything like it's got to be that was here, so that's got to be exactly the same here, and it's not really that important, then you're just going to end up ruining it for yourself.
Yeah.
As long as, as you said, the broad strokes are the same, the finer things can be slightly different.
Yeah.
In order to fit the story being told.
I can understand why they wanted to do it as well, because they wanted to give a good introduction to the Bad Batch, not going through with all of 66, them deciding not to kill a Jedi and Hunter choosing not to kill a Jedi. And they probably thought, what's the best way to do that? Is probably with a Jedi that people already know, because that will create that emotional attachment. And there's a lot of Jedi that they couldn't use because of what actually happened to them from what we know. And this is the one that they probably saw as the one that they could alter the most, with it still staying as close to canon as possible. So I do understand why they did it. I can understand why some people are bothered, but I'd just say the scene was incredibly good, powerful, emotional. I think if they had done a terrible job, maybe we should get angry. But I think in the grand scheme of things, they smashed it out of the park. So I approve.
Yeah, me too. And also the scene nicely set up what was happening with what's going to happen with Crosshairs throughout the rest of the episode, and I'm assuming the next few episodes. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's set up nicely. I think as soon as obviously after Order 66 and the clones turning, and then the Bad Batch being like, oh, what else happening here? I think as soon as Crosshairs was like, good soldiers follow orders, I was like, oh no. I was like, here we go.
That famous phrase is back again.
My man's on the verge of turning here.
Yeah, I thought that whole... I mean, let's just talk about like the first bit, which is, I guess, like the introduction of the Bad Batch. We talked quite a bit about Caleb and Order 66, but that sort of bit when they run in down the hill, sort of the wrecker pushes the boulder, and then they come in, they've got the Bad Batch theme, which, by the way, I love playing, and then they're just taking out all these droids. I thought it was a perfect way to like reintroduce the characters. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, yes, these guys are badasses. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes to show just how more advanced and how efficient they are as like a group of 5. Like, because as the Jedi Master and the Clone Commander were saying, like, when Caleb Doom was like, oh, I brought 5 reinforcements, they're like, 5, you brought 5, and then they just roll in, wipe out the whole droid squadron that they were fighting against, and that's all you need is just these bad boys. Just shows how
exactly
top class they are.
I mean, they are meant to be the idea of like a 5-man army, sort of like the A-Team or the Expendables, or even the Avengers. It's not that the same, but it is that sort of stereotype in storytelling of like not the 1-man army, but like the 5-man army sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I do think, as you said, that like fits it perfectly, because they're like, oh, is that it? 5? But that's all they need, because the Bad Batch are badasses.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's a good intro. I like how they copied the same boulder move that they did in season 7 and that last episode of their arc, when again Wrecker like pushes the boulder down to destroy the separate droids, and they've clearly put that in their little data bank for moves to use later on.
Yeah, exactly.
Whips out again.
I think they did a very clever job of just showing how each of them fight very quickly. Hunter moves in with his knife and starts slashing them up. Crosshair's hidden up in a rock, sniping them. Wrecker is just running in and picking them up and throwing about. And Tech's using little devices, and Echo's sort of... I mean, Echo's an interesting one, because obviously he's not a mutated clone. He doesn't have a special power like they do. His comes from his sort of like physical alterations, but he was fighting in the way that Echo would usually fight, with a few changes. So I think they do a good job of like showing us how these guys fight, and sort of what it is that makes them unique and special in that sort of context.
Yeah, I think it was a nice introduction to that, as you say, and I think throughout the series they're definitely gonna like explore more like each individual person and how like their powers and enhancements definitely like contribute to like the overall team. I think they're definitely going to explore that as we go on throughout the series.
Yeah, and I think sort of my final little point on this bit was, I thought it was nice how they gave those little updates to tell us exactly when during Revenge of the Sith this is happening. So Tech got that notice that General Kenobi had engaged General Grievous. We know as fans that point is when obviously Kenobi's fighting Grievous. Hello there, General Kenobi. All that's happening as this scene's happening. But, also if you're a fan of that, you instantly, your heart sinks, because you're like, right, Order 66 is about 10, 15 minutes away right now. So those links to Revenge of the Sith were really smartly used. Yeah,
definitely. Because then, as you say, as like fans of Star Wars, you definitely know whereabouts in the timeline you are. Especially because obviously as Tech gets the information that General Kenobi is engaged, General Grievous, is engaged with Kenobi, obviously it's going to take a little while for Tech to get the information. So then Order 66 is literally like minutes away.
Yeah, exactly.
Later than it was.
Because timeline-wise, Kenobi fights Grievous for however, it's probably not that much longer fight really in real time, and then he sort of gets back to Commander Cody and then rides off on the Lizard, and then Order 66 happens. So there's that delay in transmission and that sort of thing, but timing wise it links up perfectly. I just think that's such a clever way to to play it. And then obviously they continue that later on in the episode where you see Palpatine's speech to the Senate where he creates the Galactic Empire for the first time. You see that happening. So it catches you back up of like, right, this is where we are again, because you then know from that point onwards, we are post Revenge of the Sith after that moment, because that's practically the end of that film. So yeah, I just thought they did it perfectly with the final season of the Clone Wars, and they did it perfectly here as well, of just tying that right into the film and showing the respect to that timeline that needed to be shown.
Yeah, definitely. I really moving on from that intro, I suppose, is that I really enjoyed the all the bits on Kamino.
Yeah.
And like showing off the differences. One, the differences in like attitude between like how like the Bad Batch and like the regular clones like view each other. It definitely seems like obviously the Bad Batch, even though they're like the badasses of the clone army, they're still like the outsiders on Kamino, and they're the ones that like no one wants to sit and eat lunch with, or like they get bullied basically by everyone else. Even though they could, like embarrass them all on like the battlefield.
I agree there. I thought the stuff on Kamino was really good because, firstly, as you said, it shows that they are the outsiders, but it also shows that the clones have changed. Something has changed about the regular clones because, you watch the Clone Wars and you root for every single one of those clones. They feel individual. They all have their names. They paint their armor slightly different. They're friendly and loyal and supportive. And then you see these clones in Kamino, no paint on any armor. All of them same haircut. They look exactly the same. None of them have names. They're being rude to the Bad Batch. You like instantly see like what Order 66 has done to the clone army, like straight away. And I thought that was such a good touch because that's the thing that so many of us have wanted to know. It's like what happened to the clones after Order 66. And I guess we're getting that sort of quite depressing story now in the show that they turned into dicks.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the most eye-catching part of the differences pre and post is like, as you said, like none of them take their helmets off. I think is really interesting. Like the only time you see any regular clones without their helmets on is in the mess hall when they're like eating. Obviously, they can't eat with their helmets on. But obviously, if you've watched the Clone Wars, like all these seasons, is like the clones will usually just take their helmets off when like they're talking to each other, walking about. They only tend to put their helmets back on as when they're about to go fight or about to go do something.
Yeah.
So then seeing them like just walking around like in formation around.
Yeah, and so orderly as well.
It's so strange. Like it really has shown how Order 66 has put the clones from these characters who we've grown to love due to like their personality and their human side, them just basically being, just slightly more advanced droids.
Yeah, and then the Bad Batch stand out even more because they still, because of not following Order 66 with the exception of Crosshair, they still have that core difference in personality which make them unique. They were already more unique than normal clones, but now they just seem even more out there because all the other clones have returned to this like, horrifically uniform, orderly, boring state. So yeah, I thought that was really good. And then all of that sort of tying together with the introduction or reintroduction of Tarkin. What was his title? Was he Commander Tarkin or Captain Admiral?
I don't know actually. Admiral. I think someone definitely looked on like it was on a Twitter video.
He was named by the Kaminoan, and I just can't remember what title they used for him at this point. He's definitely not Grand Moff Tarkin yet. I can tell you that, and he's not Moff Tarkin yet either. Anyway, Tarkin comes to Kamino, and we all know if Tarkin's coming to Kamino, this means trouble because he hates clones.
Man's a clone hater. Tarkin, I think a really interesting point that I thought about Tarkin was because we talked about it briefly last week about Order 66 in general, or maybe the week before, was that Tarkin obviously knows about Order 66 because of some of the things that happen later on in the episode, which I think then, shows how much he is trusted by the Emperor, which then obviously explains how he gets like the roles of like Grand Moff and stuff like that later on in Star Wars. But yeah, he's one of the few people I think actually know about Order 66.
Yeah, I think this episode pretty much confirms that like he knew about the inhibitor chips from Palpatine personally. So his involvement in the plan of Order 66 has probably been going on since that Citadel episode when they rescued him, I guess.
Yeah, it could be since then, to be fair. It's clearly it's been working his way up the trust board with Palpatine for quite some time to be able to know about Order 66 and to go to Camino and basically, freely be aware of that information. Because, there's not a lot of people in the Republic, let alone there's not a lot of people in the Empire, let alone the Republic, who are aware of Order 66.
Yeah, and I do think I love Tarkin's inclusion in this because I think he served a very interesting purpose, which was we know that by the time the Empire comes, the Imperial Army is made up of recruits, stormtroopers, they're ordinary people who have signed up, they're conscripted soldiers as opposed to clones. I think a big question everyone has is what was that transition like? How did it happen? Was it just because they got old, with that advanced speeded aging, or was it because they were chosen to get rid of? And I think we're starting to see that in this episode where Tarkin's like, clones are expensive, conscripted soldiers are cheaper, more readily available. He's essentially gone to Camino to find a reason not to use clones anymore on Palpatine's behalf. And I love that we see that because I think that's such an important piece of information to understanding the post-Order 66 galaxy. And I just love that Tarkin's the character they're using because, we said it last week and I'll say it again. He's a dick. He's the worst.
Yeah, he really is. I think a big reason as well, I think people don't realise how much of a dick he is not going after episodes like these. Even in like the original trilogy, like Tarkin's the one that blows up Alderaan. It's not Darth Vader. I think a lot of people just in the back of their minds will just have it blamed on Vader, but no, it was actually Tarkin. Tarkin was the one that was like, yeah, blow it up.
Yeah, Leia gave him the information he wanted, even though it was a lie. But he was just like, right, we're blowing up Alderaan. That's Tarkin. And it was one of the slower parts of the episode, but not slower in terms of pace. The action was quite a lot, but in terms of character development and stuff, the training, it wasn't really training, it was a test from Tarkin against the Bad Batch. I personally liked it because two reasons. I think it was an important bit to have because I think, you've got to remember that some people won't have watched the Clone Wars. So for them, this is their first chance to really, learn those intricacies about the Bad Batch and from Tarkin's perspective, because Tarkin is essentially, in a weird way, the audience who don't know the Bad Batch. He's learning from Lama Su who the Bad Batch are, why they exist, all through this test that he gives them. And secondly, the action in that test was awesome. Seeing them fight the Dark Troopers. Well, no, they're not Dark Troopers, are they? But like they're basically the prototypes to Dark Troopers. The earliest design of what the Dark Troopers will one day be are those droids that they fought. And seeing the way they fought and their throwback, with the hand signals, and Wrecker's like, I don't know what that is. And he's like, oh, what we did on Felucia. And he's like, oh yeah, I remember. Just that like chemistry between them all. I really like that scene. I thought it was good fun.
Yeah, it was actually really cool. Yeah, as soon as those droids popped out the ground, and I was like, they look so much like the Dark Troopers that we've seen in pretty much just saw in The Mandalorian. Yeah, they look almost identical. Obviously, they are like prototype 1, phase 1 versions, but
I'd almost think that they probably made them as purely like training droids or battle test droids, and then probably further down the line when they were designing the Dark Troopers, they were like, oh, that's a design that could work, we'll use that one. But yeah, it is definitely a visual hint to what the Dark Troopers came from, I guess.
Yeah, and as you said, the action was so good, especially right at the end was the bit I was like, Jesus, was when
is it the knife snipe?
Yeah, Wrecker throws his knife in the air and Crosshair snipes it, and he hits it so that the knife goes flying into the droid. I was like, Jesus, what a shot!
Yeah, that was a nice little bit. It really gave me real like sort of nostalgic vibes for the Clone Cadets episode, with Domino Squad's training. I know it obviously wasn't the same, but it felt, the look and everything felt similar. It was nice to see.
Definitely a callback.
And I think it did a lot for Hunter as well. We're really seeing Hunter as the leader, seeing him, really caring for his group. But also that start, the build up of that clashing between the two of them. The original thing with, Crosshair being mad at him for not killing the Jedi. But then that sort of develops more to sort of the way that they're starting to clash throughout this action piece and throughout the sort of episode from this point onwards.
Yeah, I mean, as this episode goes on, obviously we know what's happening, but then from Hunter and the rest of the Bad Batch perspective, it's just like every 10 minutes, they're just Crosshairs is moaning at them about not following orders or something like this, or getting heated about something.
Yeah.
You can just tell they're just what is your problem, man? And you just, every time that they go on he goes off on something, you just you begging them to work it out and be like, oh, come on, you must.
Yeah, and they're
learning, know what his problem
aren't they?
is.
They're learning slowly that the clones have been changed or altered slightly to follow orders. Tech starts to discover that, and they start to all discover it. But Crosshair's really the one that they're having to deal with, because for whatever reason, Crosshair's chip has worked better than their chips that failed completely. And I thought it was interesting that they had that one person in the team that did almost go through with Order 66. It didn't work fully until obviously Tarkin Frankensteined him up.
Yeah. I suppose that answers our theories from last week about because we were wondering about why, or if the Bad Batch will go through Order 66, and then if it didn't, why? And obviously that explains it.
I think this gave us the answers. And Echo didn't, because the separatist programming on him, when they basically turned him into a walking computer, destroyed the chip or whatever, and then the rest of them, their mutation took over and the chip wasn't functioning.
Yeah. For some reason I was thinking about this last night or today or something, and I was thinking about the chip, because anytime we've seen it in live action or the pictures of it and stuff, it doesn't actually look like a computer chip, and it definitely just looks like a piece of literally just a slice of their brain. So which is why I was wondering why it probably doesn't work in the Bad Batches, because their DNA is literally so different from the rest of the clones that it's probably just rewritten that part of the brain. It's just, I'm wondering if it's an actual chip, or if it's a bit of neuron that the Caminos have put in that they then called a chip.
Yeah,
I'm getting very technical in it, but
I think that's sort of the explanation that I think we're sort of meant to take, is that whatever sort of DNA differences or mutations that have been created in the Bad Batch has stopped the standard issue chip that they've used for the rest of the clones from working. And because I'd say physically Crosshair's mutation or whatever is sort of maybe physically not altered him the least, that's probably why his has almost worked, because the only sort of defect that he's got, mutation or power, is being a good sharpshooter. So I think his is probably the least affecting to the brain and that sort of thing. Obviously Wrecker's physically bigger, and Hunter's bigger as well, and Tech is very smart, so his brain functions are going to be very different. So I think it's quite good. It was an explanation that I instantly bought, and I was like, yeah, that completely makes sense. Let's get on with the story. You know what I mean? They didn't spend a whole load of time, but they didn't need to spend any more time than they did. They were just like, right, this makes sense. Tech's explained it. On to the next.
Yeah, definitely. They gave it as much time as needed, and it was believable, and that was it. Move on to the next part of the show.
Yeah, and I guess where that brought us next was Tarkin sort of questioning whether they followed Order 66, and in order to test them, their loyalty to the Empire, he sends them off to Onderon to take out some separatist loyalists. I think that's the phrase that he used. It was I think he said separatist insurgents or something like that, but I'm pretty sure he said separatists. So
yeah, definitely separatists.
As soon as I heard Onderon, I was like, right, is this Saw? And then obviously, lo and behold, they find Saw Gerrera and a group of partisans and innocent civilians there. that they've been told to go and kill. Now, obviously, as we know, Hunter from this episode, he's a good guy. He's got a strong moral compass. He's not willing to kill civilians. Crosshair, on the other hand, that chip inside his head is telling him you must follow orders, you must kill them. That creates a good bit of conflict. And then Probe Droid has watched the whole thing unfold. So Tarkin finds out they are traitors. What was your thoughts of that whole sequence, seeing Saw and that sort of more divisiveness between the clones?
I thought it was really interesting that I thought it was really cool that they used Saw, because, well, one, I feel like as a character, he is very, especially later on in the Star Wars universe, like between like now and Rogue One, and stuff like that. You know, we find out that he's very extreme in the way he deals with like the Empire.
Yeah,
so, like,
extreme is definitely the word.
He's a rebel, like, you know, like Luke Han and all that, but his methods are very taking it too far. He goes over the line sometimes. So I feel like if, you know, Hunter and that had killed him, you know, they would have done some good. I don't know.
Well, I was thinking about this. I think if Crosshair murdered him right there, do you think the Death Star ever would have blown up? Because Saw was so integral in like Jyn Erso's life that if he had died, Jyn Erso might not have survived, and then she wouldn't have got the information about the thing in the Death Star from Galen Erso, and then Galen Erso wouldn't have got it to Leia and the Rebellion, and then Luke wouldn't have been able to blow it. You know, there's that whole thing that could have spiraled from Crosshair just killing Saw Gerrera right then. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think the thing I liked most about his inclusion was what he had to tell them about like the state of the galaxy. Like he basically said to them, the old ways are dead. You know, you just got to adapt and survive. Like this, we no longer live in the same galaxy anymore. And I don't think really they quite clocked what had happened until he said that. You know, they were feeling uncomfortable about Palpatine's speech and all this sort of thing. But I think when they heard him say that, they realized, right, we're not safe anymore. And that obviously leads to Hunter wanting to go back and fetch Omega, who we will get onto and talk in detail about. But yeah, Saw, I liked seeing him.
Yeah, I feel like he's definitely one step ahead of everyone else when it comes to just what this means for the galaxy with, you know, Palpatine's speech and the Republic being changed into the Empire. He definitely is on the ball about what that means for the galaxy and how the galaxy will be in years to come.
Yeah, and I think it was you know, some people might say, oh, they just chucked Saw in because he's a character, you know, and it's fan service. But I actually think he was the right character to give them that information that they needed at that point in time to change their perspective. I think there were very few characters who could give the perspective that Saw Gerrera could give. So I actually think they used him really well. And, you know, it didn't just feel like a flashy cameo. Like he served a purpose in that episode of moving the Bad Batch on to being like, right, we are not going to fit in this empire anymore. We're out, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's very good. And then obviously that whole scene then leads into Tarkin, calling the Bad Batch traitors, but then him being very aware of Crosshairs being the only one that was like arguing the point that, you know, these are the orders we were given. Doesn't matter if you agree with them. This is what we should be doing.
Yeah, and then that brings them to being arrested when they get back to Camino. And I think it's probably the natural point to talk about Omega because they've already met Omega in the, you know, with the mess hall scene, and then, you know, Wrecker's bit like, I like this one, you know, because she threw the food at the other guys. So they are introduced to Omega, who is a clone, a defective clone as well, as Tech tells us in that scene on Onderon. She's a defective clone. She's one of the 5, you know, the Bad Batch, 4 of them, Echo not being one of them, her being the 5th defective clone because Echo's a rig. So she's obviously a child, girl, clone. She takes a liking to them. She knows who they are. They take a bit of a liking to her. And when they realize she's in danger, they go back to fetch her. Well, mostly Hunter, because Hunter's the sort of the beating heart in this episode, at least. But yeah, what were your thoughts on Omega, John?
I have a feeling that she is going to be a very interesting character as the series progresses. And I really enjoyed the intro we got from her.
Yeah.
Obviously, just as before, we obviously found out that she was one of the enhanced clones and stuff. I think there was teasers for it throughout. If you were paying attention, a big one for me was when Tarkin was talking to the Camino. I think it might have been the Prime Minister he was talking to.
Yeah, it was the Prime Minister. I can't remember what his name is. Anyway, I can't remember his name. It's not Lama Su, it's the other one.
Yeah. And Tarkin's very interested about making more enhanced clones because after the performance he's just watched of the Bad Batch, and then he asked the Prime Minister, "Is like, oh, how many did you make?" And the Prime Minister says, "Only 5." And obviously Tarkin and then anyone who wasn't really paying attention would just assume that he meant the 5 that we've met already, including Echo. But, those who know and are paying attention, Echo isn't a enhanced clone. He was just a regular clone that was experimented on. So that hints that there's another clone out there who is enhanced, which is then teasing, obviously, the fact that Omega is the one because she's, the newest person we've met this episode.
Yeah.
I think I really like her as a character.
Yeah, and I think she is serving the role that Ahsoka and Ezra served in Clone Wars and Rebels, of the young, sort of the for a younger audience, for kids, she's the entry point in the same way that Ahsoka and Ezra are the entry point. She's the one that a younger audience relates to, but she's the one who's going to grow up with the seasons, with the characters. She's found a family in the same way that Ezra's found a family and Ahsoka found a family. And however, I do think she is the least annoying. I mean, Ahsoka and Ezra, like, by the end, I love them. They're like my favorite characters ever. But first time you meet Ahsoka and the first time you meet Ezra, they're annoying as hell. Omega, actually, I didn't find that annoying. She's a little bit annoying, but she's not as annoying as they were. And I know Filoni has it's very clear this is something he likes to do. You introduce them annoying and then you make the audience love them. You can't just start with them being lovable from the get-go, because you don't get that reward of loving them by the end. You've got to see them grow. So I do think she's a bit annoying, but that's the point, because then hopefully she's going to grow with the series, and by the end we'll look back and think, Omega's pretty cool now. But even from the get-go, I thought she was pretty cool. I had a lot of respect when she lobbed that food at the nasty clone. She stood up for herself. She hit some shots with a gun, and she was good at crawling through the vents and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I like Omega. I think she's going to be a really interesting character.
Yeah, I think another big thing about introducing characters like Omega and especially Ahsoka as well, I suppose, is that it gives the main character that you want to have in the show. Like, obviously in the Clone Wars it was Anakin, and in the Bad Batch it is leaning towards Hunter being like the main character. I mean, you've got the Bad Batch surrounding, but Hunter is like the main one that we're going to experience the show through, and it gives them a really big character development as well, because obviously as the Clone Wars progressed, and Ahsoka and Anakin grew up together, obviously Ahsoka had a big character development, but then so did Anakin, having to raise her and teach her and stuff like that. So I think Hunter's going to go through a very similar thing as the series progresses, and he's going to have to realize that. Yeah. Because obviously he's only lived his life as like a soldier, and he's going to have to adapt his life and become more nurturing towards Omega. As the series progresses, I
really think they've chosen him to be like the real beating heart of the series, and I like that. I think Hunter's by far my favorite character so far. I just think, the way he's it's just so morally good. He's a badass, but he really chooses to follow good in the same way that Rex does. I feel like he's similar to Rex, and he has that heart of gold. And he's taken Omega under his wing, sort of at first. He just sort of warned her to stay away from them. But when he realized the danger that she could be in with Tarkin and the Empire, immediately thinks to save her. And, that whole the escape from the prison sequence is pretty cool. Obviously, you've got Tarkin altering Crosshair to make him even more, receptive to orders. And then you have that final escape action sequence where they're trying to get onto the ship and they encounter Crosshair, who's now fully just trying to kill them. And I personally thought that scene was great. What did you think?
Yeah, I think it was really good. It was, I think it was a big shock factor for the characters, and that was, I think, when they realized that they were screwed with Crosshairs aiming his gun at them. They're not going away there without something special.
And it was pretty tough for them to deal with because obviously, like, Crosshair's like one of their, their brothers. We don't know how long the Bad Batch have been together, but Clone Force 99 have been together for a while. He's been there the whole time, and for him to become the antagonist, and I do think he's going to be the primary antagonist of the series. I think Tarkin's obviously going to be, playing the puppeteer at the top, but I do think Crosshair's actually going to be, at least for the first half of the series, is going to be the main villain. And I do think maybe Rex or Ahsoka is going to help them figure out how they can get the chip out of him and, bring him back. And I do think at least the season or the half season is going to end with Crosshair being back on the team. But I do think it's great for their first real struggle to deal with the Empire. It's not this huge, big empire, but it's one of their friends, and having to deal with that as a embodiment of the evil of the Empire, I think is a really good choice. And I really like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's very true. I suppose it gave us a very interesting point for Omega as well, is just before they leave, you think that Crosshairs has got Hunter and Wrecker, I think, like pinned down, and Crosshairs is going to go for a kill shot. Omega just comes out of nowhere and like snipes him across the hangar with a little blaster.
It's a good shot. And this, I guess our last talking point of episode 1 before we get on to episode 2 is, are they hinting at Omega being Force sensitive? ? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely hinting towards her being
enhanced
special
in some way.
Yeah. Because one, she looks nothing like the other clones.
Yeah.
So there's something fishy going on there. 2, she's a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And, all the rest of the clones are
male.
Clones of Jango Fett, so they're male. So there is something extra special going on here, I think. And I think a fan theory that I've seen a lot across the internet, and I personally agree with it very much, is that Omega is Force sensitive, and that is why the Kaminoan, like the lead medical doctor, was like very keen to keep her by her side.
Mm-hmm. But then when it seemed like she might get killed, lets her escape straight away, because it's more important that she's alive and out there than, I think that was what happened there when Lama Su let her escape. I think it was, she was about to die probably. So she was like, just go, because it's more important that you're a rare specimen, that you survive, sort of thing. I think that's what's going on there. Yeah,
she's a very valuable piece of bioengineering, I think.
Yeah. I think for me, there were 2 parts. One of them you mentioned. There were 2 parts to me that suggested she might be Force sensitive. The first one was when they were in the prison cell and she was talking to Crosshair, and she said that she could tell that he was angry or something like that. And that to me said that she could sense his emotions, which is something that Force sensitives do. And then the other is, as you were talking about, that pretty wild shot that she hit on Crosshair after never picking up a blaster before. That's a sort of a trait of someone who's Force sensitive, just naturally being able to, hit a shot with a gun. So those are 2 things that are leaning me towards thinking that perhaps she could be Force sensitive. The only other theory that I've seen, which is another one I like, is that she has all of the enhanced traits of the other members of the Bad Batch, so that the fact she could hit the shot was because she's got Crosshair's, accuracy. The fact she could figure out what was going on with Crosshairs because she's actually really intelligent, and she's got that from tech. And then the other ones might come soon. I'm less sure on that one. I think it's an interesting one, but I don't think she is just going to be a mixed mash of all of them. I am leaning on her being Force sensitive, and I think it's interesting. My only worry is I wouldn't want it to become another Mandalorian copy. I think so far they're doing quite a good job of setting themselves aside from the Mandalorian. It's a very different type of found family story, but there is a concern that if she does end up being Force sensitive, it ends up being too similar to Grogu and Din with Hunter and her. I don't think that's going to happen. But that's just my only little concern there.
Yeah, no, that's a valid worry, I suppose. Just hopefully they will. Obviously, I trust in Dave Filoni. I reckon that he's not going to be silly enough to do that.
Yeah.
And I think he's wise enough as a producer and stuff to not fall for that trap.
Yeah. But overall, thoughts on that first episode? I was very excited
Oh,
afterwards.
yeah, it was very good. Yeah, I don't think I'd be hard passed to find someone who didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, it was very popular, that first episode. It was nice to see the Star Wars fandom united on liking something, which doesn't happen that often.
Yeah,
So
nice change.
it was really good first episode. Big episode, and a lot happened, and it set up the show perfectly. And then today, as of recording, it'll be yesterday by the time this is out, we had episode number 2. We got 2 in 1 week. We got episode 2, which was called Cut and Run. Anyone who is a fan of the Clone Wars saw the word cut and instantly thought that we might be seeing Cutler Quain. And guess who shows up within the first 2 minutes of this episode?
The boy himself.
The boy. So for anyone who hasn't watched the Clone Wars, Cut was in an episode of Clone Wars from season 2 called The Deserter. And I believe the clones tracked General Grievous to the planet Seleucami. I think I pronounced it wrong last week as Salakumi. It's Seleucami, apparently. He tracked him there. And then Rex comes across Cut, who is a deserter. He's deserted from the clones. He's met a lovely Twi'lek and they've had a family. And Rex sort of grapples with this whole idea of him deserting. He thinks it's very wrong, but then he listens to Cut and sort of understands why he's chosen to do it. And that's all we know of him. But then this is him back for the first time since Clone Wars Season 2 as a friend of the Bad Batch that they go to for a bit of assistance, which I think made a lot of sense. It was nice to catch back up on his story. But I also think he had a lot of important lessons to teach the Bad Batch, particularly Hunter, and not just, you know, what it means to be a clone and what it means to sort of give up being a clone for, you know, something else, but also parenting. He taught Hunter a lot of parenting lessons.
Yeah, I think, as you said, it made complete sense for the Bad Batch to go to Cut, specifically because he's hidden from the Republic for all these years. I mean, probably like at least, 3-4 years he's hidden from the Republic. So he's a man to go to if you want to hide and stay hidden and maybe, just set your bearings for a bit, a nice place to lay low. So it definitely made sense for them to go there for that. But yeah, Hunter definitely got the added bonus of learning what it's like to be a father, I suppose, or to look after, a child. Because, yeah, as you said, Cut has 2 children with his Twi'lek wife. And I think at the end of the episode, or as the episode progresses, you see that Hunter begins to understand that he needs to treat Omega, like a child, or, give her that nurturing side and don't treat her like another soldier.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was some, I think there's almost less to talk about this second episode, not because nothing happened, but because it was a much more character driven episode than a event driven episode. I mean, they went to Seleucami, they met Cut. Cut decides that his family needs to leave the planet because the Empire are taking control, and his hiding place essentially is at risk of being found. They needed what were they called, the codes. They had a name for it, didn't they? Oh, for goodness sake, have I forgotten that already?
It was something like barcodes, but not barcodes.
Yeah, it's yeah.
I actually don't know.
Whatever. They needed the codes to escape, and Tech and the Bad Batch helped them to get the code so they can escape. But then the drama of the episode, and the thing that I liked the most, was that Hunter, as he learns to be more nurturing to Omega, he decides that she should go with Cut because it's way too dangerous to be stuck with them. And I thought that was quite a difficult decision, I think, for him to make. And I think it was nice to see him not only make that decision, but when she refuses that decision in the end and comes back to them, for him realizing that it's not his choice, it's hers. And it's now just his job to protect her now. And she is one of the batch, whether he thinks it's the safest thing for her or not. And I think that was that sort of almost sets up the family really within 2 episodes. The first episode is them realizing they have to save her, and the second one is realizing that it's not just the job of saving her, but they are now responsible for her, because she has chosen them as her new family and not Cut's family. And I think that was the crux of the episodes, and I thought it delivered on that really well. And I think Hunter, within 2 episodes, is already a slightly different person than he was at the start of the episode. And I think that's good storytelling, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was very good character development, I think, for Hunter. And just to implement how Omega, yes, it kind of solidifies her position in the Bad Batch, and that she is part of them. I think another point the episode did really well was showing the transition from Republic to Empire and how that affects the citizens of the planets, but then also the clones as well. Because I feel like the clones in this episode acted like far much more like, just the stormtroopers we've seen from the original trilogy and Rebels. Just don't take no for an answer. Like, have that poor guy trying to leave the planet and was like, well, I've paid for this shuttle, so can I go? And then it's like, no, you need your codes.
Chain codes. That's what it's called. It's called chain codes.
These are not the clones we've been used to over the last seven seasons. They're just basically stormtroopers.
Yeah, and I saw some comments that this episode was filler, and I was like, people need to understand what filler means. Filler is an episode where the episode essentially has nothing to do, but it's just there to fill in a gap. This was not filler. You learned 2 major things, which is, as John just rightly said, how different the Empire is from the Republic and how much it has changed the clones into sort of real heartless, enforcement. And then secondly, as we were talking earlier about, Hunter and becoming a parent. I think people throw the term filler around so much because, there isn't some massive plot twist and some big explosion, but that you learn so much from these 20 minutes of like the state of the galaxy right now. Like the Empire is solidifying their control on every planet and numbering citizens. Like Echo had that great line when he was just like, clones spent their whole time trying to like create names for themselves and get away from numbers. And now we're going back to being numbered, the galaxy as a whole. And I think that's such an important transition. The Empire's just turn around and just numbering, like giving chain codes to every single citizen, because if you don't have one, you can't do anything. And that's such a difference from like the free and fair republic that they were used to living in. So, filler, I think, is a very silly term. I think that episode changed the universe a lot in the sense of what we learn is how quickly Palp solidified his control.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, every single citizen's got to get one of those chain codes. So that literally means that every single person in the universe is basically just a number in a database for the Empire to track. And then as well as that, is they have their ships are basically got tags on them as well. So then there's literally, you can't go anywhere.
They're impounding ships as well. Like, you're like, that's another point. There's so much happening that like we just take for granted in the original trilogy. Like, how much control the Empire have over space stations and the ports like Mos Eisley and stuff like that. And that's even in the Outer Rim. But I mean, this is, I think Seleucami is more of a mid-rim planet, I think. But the fact that they're able to consolidate this much control so quickly shows how much power the Empire have straight away. And I think this was a really important episode to learn that. So yeah, I completely agree. I thought that bit was really interesting, and the bit that you point out with the guy being like pushed over because he didn't have his chain codes, the clones would not have done that 2 weeks ago, would they?
No, yeah. I mean, as much as the clones are like there to follow orders and do as they're told, I feel like pre-Order 66, they had a bit of leeway about things. So, if someone came up to the thing, was like, oh, I've paid for my shuttle, like, I know I haven't got these chain codes, but I've already paid for it, they'll sort something out, they'll organise it, they'll be like, okay, go come with us and we'll sort you out a chain code, something a bit nicer with a bit of customer service to it.
But I mean, we saw in the Clone Wars so many instances of the clones like bending over backwards to help the citizens and like innocent civilians and stuff like that during the Clone Wars, like so many times. I can think of like 10 examples already off the top of my head. Whereas straight away we're seeing the clones they're not the same clones that we knew and love. They are practically stormtroopers now. We just know that they're Jango Fett clones underneath the armor, and the armor's not quite at the Clone War the stormtrooper look yet, but they are basically stormtroopers now.
Yeah, it's just it's really showing how how the Republic has gone from the Republic, which is, you know, a nice free, or meant to be like a nice free democracy for everyone, etc., etc., to the Empire, which is dictatorship and what we say goes.
Yeah. There was two other things I want to mention about this episode. The first one is I thought it did a really nice job of showing us the difference between Tech and Echo, because I think a lot of people rightly sort of question what is actually the difference between Tech and Echo, because Tech, you know, is really good with tech and he's really smart and he's always figuring stuff out and hacking stuff. But then Echo is sort of a walking computer. What's the difference between the two of them? And I thought this episode did a really nice job of showing them working together. So Tech was like, I can create the chain codes but I need you to break into the Imperial computer using his slicer in his hand. I thought that nice little, like, just simple little job that they had to do, which was important to, you know, saving Cut and his family. But I thought that nice little moment actually showed that there is a unique difference between the two of them, and each of them have their own role to play within the Bad Batch. And I thought that clarified it, because I was starting to get concerned that there was going to be a bit too much similarity between the two. So I thought that was a good little scene.
Yeah, definitely. I think another big difference between Tech and Echo, as you say, is like Echo has the ability to like slice into computers and he can download schematics or like open a door and stuff, but he's still not as smart as Tech. I mean, Tech has got the ability to sit there and figure things out, work out things logically, while while he is a walking computer, I feel like he's not like sitting there doing like complex equations in his head and stuff, while Tech is.
Yeah, and then Echo still has the ARC trooper in him, when he was sort of like sneaking into the building and doing all the little vaults over the boxes and stuff. You still see in him that he's got that ARC trooper in him. He's still a strong fire. And then I guess the last thing I wanted to mention was that obviously when they spoke to Cut, Rex had been there just yesterday, which suggests to me that at least, maybe not next episode, but in a few episodes, we know we're going to see Rex because he's in the trailer. But I think the Bad Batch have probably thought, right, well, if Rex was through here recently, let's go find him. Yeah,
definitely. Which then also begs the question was Rex by himself, or was Rex, with like Ahsoka? Which I suppose we'll have to find out in coming episodes.
Yeah, I think... I don't know is the answer. I would like to see Ahsoka just because I think it'd be interesting to get her perspective. I think it would be important for her perspective to get across to the Bad Batch because, they now have a new responsibility in terms of Omega, but also how do they survive in this empire? Because they can't just run forever. And I think Ahsoka's going through that at the same time as well. So I do think it would be good for those to meet. Hope it happens. And it's a Filoni show, so I'm sure he's going to throw Ahsoka in there because he loves Ahsoka, and we all do as well. But we shall see. But I'm excited to see Rex. But I just, I just found it so nice that we just got a one-off episode about one of the clones from the Clone Wars that we met very briefly, caught up with his story to see where he is a couple years later. He taught a lesson to the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch learned what they needed to learn, and then they got up and left. I just thought it was nice as a Clone Wars fan to see Cut back, but he served his purpose and then he's off again with his family. And I think that was a nice little way of doing it. He's not... I wouldn't actually enjoy the show if they were just going to old clones and adding them to the squad. So every time they just got one more member of the squad in the ship.
No, yeah, I completely agree. He's just, he was there, served his purpose, and now he's off in the universe, live his own life.
Yeah, and his family's going to be safer, which is good as well, because the Bad Batch have helped him to protect his family, and he's helped the Bad Batch to sort of get a better understanding of what's going on at the moment and a better understanding of how they can look after Omega. So yeah, all in all, I like that second episode a lot. I think out of the two, I prefer the first one just because it was a big episode and lots of exciting stuff happened. And the whole Order 66 scene with Caleb really just blew my mind. But I still think that second episode was consistent, strong. I think out the gate so far, this is a very strong start to the series. I think both Clone Wars and Rebels took a little bit of time to grow, but I actually think Bad Batch out the gate is doing pretty good. So yeah, what are your overall thoughts? First 2 episodes, this episode?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed them. Yeah, as you say, I think Clone Wars season 1, there was things that needed fixing or needed improving as a series.
Teething issues. We'll call them teething issues.
Yeah, teething issues, I think, is the perfect term. But I feel like it's only 2 episodes, but I feel like the 2 episodes we've seen of the Bad Batch have been both really strong, and I'm just really interested to see where they go with it from what we've had so far.
Yeah, and I think even though this show is like the spiritual successor to Clone Wars in the sense of seeing what happened to the clones after the Clone Wars, which it's doing beautifully, I think style-wise it feels a lot more like Rebels. Like, we are following this one crew for the whole time. It's not like Clone Wars where we jump about to different characters for different arcs. This is the Bad Batch and Omega. These are our focus. It's a found family story. It's their journey through the galaxy tied in with the legacy of the Clone Wars. But I like that sort of it's almost if you put Clone Wars and Rebels in a blending machine, in a blender, the juice that will come out will be the Bad Batch. It's like the best of both worlds.
Oh yeah, actually, I completely agree with that. It definitely is. Definitely, I think Dave Filoni's taken parts from both and things he's learned over the years, and is definitely just putting it together into the Bad Batch.
Yeah, and I also think there's definitely aspects of definitely aspects of the Mandalorian in there. Some of the inspiration from the Mandalorian. So it's nice to see, these strong story aspects from different shows getting merged into something that's unique, and I hope it stays really unique. But yeah, it's a strong start. It's very positive all round, I feel like. I have seen some criticisms of the second episode, but I disagree with them personally. You're always going to get people when there's a slow episode who say, oh, it's filler. It's like, well, I can tell you filler episodes because they're the episode of Rebels when they spent the whole time trying to get Maloo runs the fruit from the Imperials. That was a filler episode. Some of the droid episodes in the Clone Wars, that was filler. This episode wasn't filler.
No, this episode definitely had interesting things to get across. So anyone calling it filler, it needs to pay attention to the whole thing and
the
not
story.
Just the animation of the main character. Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much our thoughts on the first 2 episodes. Anything else to say, John?
No, just excited to where it's going to be. I'm looking forward to talking about future episodes on future podcasts.
Yeah, I think because obviously from now onwards, each episode is going to be about 30 minutes and we're going to get 1 a week as opposed to the 2 this week. So I think what we'll probably do is each episode will be like our review plus a discussion about something else. I'd hope that maybe that discussion about something else will probably be tied into the Bad Batch episode. So, maybe there's Tarkin plays a big role in the next one, or he's already played a big role. Maybe we do a bit more an in-depth chat on Tarkin or something like that. We'll sort of see how it links into the episodes that are coming out, but we'll try and do like a 50-50 split between like an episode review and something else, because we don't really just want us to be talking about a 30-minute episode for a whole hour. We could do it, today. We could chat for a whole hour about the 2 episodes because there was a lot, because it was 90 minutes worth of Bad Batch. But I think the next couple episodes we'll try and do a mixture of Bad Batch review / something else, depending on what crops up.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, feel free to, I'm here to chat about anything. So
yeah, exactly. If anyone's actually, that's a good point. If any of our loyal, lovely listeners have got any questions about the episodes that have come out, what our predictions are, any questions like that, just message us on either Twitter or Instagram, which is Twitter's at Vaders Castle Pod and Instagram's at Live from Vaders Castle. If you send us a message with any questions, we'll answer any of those questions, whether it's wanting a direct answer like a fact, we'll do the research, or if you're just asking for our opinion, we can provide that as well. So yeah, I'm excited that we've actually got like exciting new Star Wars coming every week and we have a place to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. Much looking forward to future episodes.
Perfect. Well, we shall see everyone next week for our episode 3 review of the Bad Batch. I think the name has leaked to the episode, but I can't remember what it was. I think it's the Replacements, I think, is the episode. I might be wrong. I think that's what I heard today. I think Star Wars Explained said it on his YouTube video. So no idea what it's going to be about, but I am definitely excited.
Yeah, me too. That sounds cool.
Okay, perfect. So you've been listening to Live from Vaders Castle, episode 5. I've been Dan, and John's been John.
I have indeed.
And we will catch you next week.
Yeah, see you later. Thanks for listening.
Cheers for listening. Bye.